Greetings, compadres. It's the Boozeless Book Club. We're back in session. Yes, we are. So I have Carolyn Bunn with me. I have Alysse Bryson with me. And it's just the three of us, just the
The three of us.
We can make it if we try, just
the three of us. You know, Amy, recently you and I sung together, and I got a lot of compliments on your singing, but not on mine. So, yeah.
But why? I thought you sounded great. And I don't know. I can't.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. But that was very enjoyable. I loved it very much. It was so fun when we did that. And so Alysse and I, if you haven't seen it, Alysse turned 17 years sober. So the day before that, we did a beautiful rendition of 16 going on 17, like from The Sound of Music.
Except we renamed it The Sound of Sober.
The Sound of Sober.
And we wrapped ourselves in blackout curtains. I particularly thought the blackout curtains were a nice touch.
It was amazing. I loved it.
Carolyn saw it. Yeah, in person.
I was also incredibly, I mean, you both sounded amazing. But Amy, I was like, Amy can sing. Like, why have I known you for so long? And I'm like, how did I not know this?
I'm telling you, sober karaoke night needs to happen.
For sure.
I'm down. I mean, I think that would be so fun. I'm definitely in for sure. And on that note, get it? Note. I'm going to have Carolyn read the blurb for our book for the month, which was That's What Junkies Do. And it is by Thomas, I want to say Figlioli, but he calls himself Figs in the book, so I'm going to call him Figs. I feel like he and I are on a basis where I can call him Figs.
Love it. Yes, yeah. Tommy Figs, right?
Tommy Figs. Yep.
Awesome. Well, this is a little bit longer of an intro, but okay. I think it's fantastic, so I'm going to read it. That's What Junkies Do is a brutally honest, often dark journey of one man's struggle with alcoholism and drug addiction. This story starts innocently enough in 1980s Brooklyn, New York, with a young boy, Tommy Figlioli, making a bad choice so he could gain the respect of kids he looked up to and admired. Alcohol gives him the courage to be the person he always wanted to be, and his fear and insecurity leaves his lifelong struggle begins. Being a good student, he lands a scholarship where alcohol and hard partying increase with each passing day. And when things start to turn sour, he moves to Brooklyn for a geographic change and is back to his old hometown that his life starts to unravel at a steady, almost torturous pace. And after losing a promising career in the financial industry, his life turns even darker, eventually being hospitalized in a psych unit for alcohol and cocaine use. And it goes on, but now a grown man, an upstanding citizen with a career and a fiance, people who count on him every day. Tommy navigates his way through a 7.5-year struggle of various prescription medications, eventually finding his way back to recovery and the life he always prayed for when times were at their worst.
Thank you so much. So, I wanted to just kick this off with jumping right into the parts where he was working in the financial world that you mentioned. And I can't remember exactly how he worded it. And I'm trying really hard not to pull out quotes from the book anymore because it took me a while, people, but I did realize, oh, but if I do that, then maybe people won't read the book because I've read it to them. And so I'm going to try and just paraphrase instead. So he was working, in this big financial kind of cushy job, and they kept sort of giving him more and more chances, and he was using, and he was trying to make it look like, he wasn't, but he was doing some illegal stuff, and they kind of were sort of on to him, but trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. And then he's like, yeah. And then I end up getting just mad over like the smallest thing, like completely obliterating all of my behaviors that I've been doing. But then all of a sudden I'm pointing the finger at them, like at my boss and at the people I work for, And to me, the reason I thought that would be an interesting thing to kick this off with is that right there is how my alcoholism shows up every time. Like, I can be doing something over here that I'm sort of justifying in my own mind, even as a sober woman. Like, I'm just, oh, well, it's no big deal that I'm going to take, 4,000 ketchup packets from the Wendy's, countertop or whatever when we're there, because I'll probably use them and I'm spending like $70 at Wendy's because I've got all my kids here. And if I don't use them, no big whoop, I'll throw them in my junk drawer. It's like, I'll justify that stuff. Right. And then there'll be, it's like, then I want to point the finger at like, oh, the landfills are filling up. And why don't they do something about this? Maybe because I'm like throwing away unused ketchup packets that I stole from Wendy's. I
have to say, I do feel relieved by this admission of ketchup guilt, because for a long time, not anymore, but for a long time, I would hoard the Splenda packets from Starbucks.
Yes.
Hoard. Instead of buying them at the grocery store like an adult, I'd be like, I'm a Starbucks customer. I come here all the time, so I'm entitled to cases of Splenda. No, I'm not. So
this is so refreshing, though. This is like true confessions. I love this. It's funny, though, the mentality of it, right? Like, I mean, you use the word entitled, and that's exactly what I finally realized that I was doing. I'm like, and I'm not going to say that I don't do it anymore. I'm still currently practicing said behavior. So room for growth.
Yeah. And I could completely relate to that as well. I definitely have experiences where I was like doing things and justifying things. And at one point during the book, he's basically stealing money from customers, but justifying it that they're rich and they won't, like, he works at a bank, but justifying that they're rich and they won't, like, the money won't go missing. And the fact that he's setting boundaries by not stealing from students, not stealing from old people, so that makes him like a good person, and these people aren't going to miss the money that he's stealing. So just the way that it shows up in, like, making excuses for our actions, and that we're justifying in some type of way, I think is something that we can all relate to.
I also related to that part because you may not know this about me, but of the many jobs I've had, I was once a bank teller, and we would have to count out our till at the end of the night. And, if we were off, we got not written up. I mean, it got documented, right? But, occasionally that would happen by an honest mistake. You would honestly give somebody one too many 20s or something. But there were definitely times, now this is before I stopped drinking, that I would definitely intentionally take it because I knew I needed drinking money. So I definitely was guilty of that. So that part reminded me of that. But even in recovery, in addition to the Splenda packets, my trick used to be at Target or Walgreens or Walmart or Michael's. If I had a cart, any place I had a cart, if I put things on the bottom of the cart, and when I went through the register, I didn't pick them up and bring them to the top and they didn't notice them and scan them. My thing was, well, you're just dumb. You're just not a very good employee because you didn't do your job to check everything in my cart. So I'm entitled to everything on the bottom. And let me tell you, when I went to go make my financial amends to Michael's, I walked in and I found somebody in whatever color their aprons are. And I was like, my name's Alysse. And this many years ago, I stole approximately $75 worth of merchandise, and I would like to pay it back. And this woman looked at me. She's like, okay, I'll see you over on cash register 3. And I was like, how many alcoholics get sober and make amends at Michael's? Apparently a lot. And I went up there and she was like, what department did you steal from? And I was like, it was the picture frame department, the print, wherever the wall photo stuff is. She's okay. She rings it up. I go and pay for it. She hands me my receipt. I promptly burst into tears, like just sobbing uncontrollably. She was like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" I'm like, "I'm just so happy. I'm just so happy. Thank you so much." And I went home, and I actually still had that at the time. I still had that picture hanging on my wall, and I taped the receipt on the back of it. And, subconsciously, up until that point, every time I walked by that picture, subconsciously, I knew I didn't pay for it. And so subconsciously, it was always making me not feel good. But once I put the receipt on it, it was just like,
I love that. I love it so much. And when you were talking and you said, apparently a lot of people make amends at Michael's, like she wasn't surprised. I am just saying that, sidebar, I kind of see like a t-shirt line in our future that's like, I made amends at Michael's, and we could have at Walmart, we could have, all these
at
various things.
Target. Yeah.
Yes, and we could have it based on the region where you live. So, for example, yes, go.
Well, I could even one up you, because if we do that, I'm going to end up with like 800 t-shirts, right? Because I was a klepto. So what about let's go Girl Scout brownie style with a sash and a men's sash, and then a badge from each store when you make your amends.
Okay.
Carolyn, are you starting our Etsy shop right now?
Yeah.
And I have a cousin that makes patches.
Oh.
This is brilliant.
Okay.
The amends sash.
The amends sash. I'm totally in. And then we can have an app developed. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll develop an app, and then you go on and you get a certain amount of like points. It's like that points. Pokemon. Do you remember that Pokemon game?
Gotta catch them all. Gotta amend them all.
Yeah. And it's like people were all over the downtown park. And
I was one of them in downtown Bellevue. Oh,
like
yeah.
looking for like, I mean, it was crazy. Do you remember that, Carolyn? Were you like ever? Yeah. I just remember.
I don't remember seeing people, but I remember like hearing about it on the internet.
Oh, yeah.
I was not one of those people.
Dude, you know what? Okay, wait. But I think we're on to something. And
this is not a bad idea.
It's not.
We've had worse. Let's be clear.
We've had worse. I've had worse. All right. Because here's the big thing is, by the time people, if you're in the 12-step fellowship or you've done this 12 steps, by the time people get to the 8th and the 9th step, a lot of times, they're like, fatigued. I'll call it step fatigue, right? And they're like, that's where they say, that's one of the places where people will relapse, is doing, well, you never made your 9th step amends, right? Is kind of the thing. It's like the 4th step and the 9th step, or the 5th step, right? So it's kind of one of those things. So we need some maybe like motivation to get people to follow through with their 8th and 9th step. And I think this is it.
The amends sash. And it can be purple, because isn't purple the color of recovery? Isn't that the official recovery color? I don't know.
I don't know, but it sounds good.
Yeah. I mean, purple is not my favorite. I would, of course, vote for black or even denim, but either way, I'm in. But I think we were talking about a book.
Sorry. Yes, we were. But don't forget to email your cousin after this.
I'm on it.
Okay.
I'll send you guys her Instagram too, because she makes badges. She just got this new huge machine, and her specialty is custom Taylor Swift badges. All the Swifties follow her. Yeah. Carissa in the Sea. I'll send you her Instagram. She's amazeballs.
Well, I love this.
Mm-hmm.
And, and I think that Tommy Figs would also love this, because what we could do is, as I was starting to say about the regions where you live, so we could have like Brooklyn edition, or, Manhattan edition. So like if I were, somebody who traveled a lot, let's say, I mean, I don't know, I'm just spitballing here, and I went to New York and did something shady there, then I get a badge, a traveler's badge, for visiting that location and making my amends. So anyway, I'm sorry I keep talking about this.
But let's talk this all the way through. Okay. If you see someone though that has a sash and they're just covered in badges, is it a good thing because they've gone and owned all this stuff? Or are you like questioning that person like, wow, you did that much? I
No,
mean,
I think it's a
where's
good
the
thing.
line?
I think it's a good thing because I literally, who was I telling this to the other day? I don't know. I was telling somebody because I spoke at Medina not long ago, and I was like, man, I'm sick of my story. I'm just sick of my story. And so what, you know, yeah, I think my point is that my sash wouldn't be very plentiful because I think I don't even remember all the shady like things that I did, and they do come up over time. So I will remember things as, situations occur, current time, real time in my life, and I'll be like, oh, and then I'll have to like sort of go back in time and, remember, yeah. Okay, so what am I going to do about that? And look into what am I going to do for a living amends and some of my amends. I don't know why we're talking about amends because I took it there. That's why we are. But some of my amends were not really, people just wanted me to live differently. Do you know what I mean? So I didn't have like a huge something that would get me a badge. You know what I'm saying? So maybe this is my problem. Sorry. I just had Aves came in because I have to do a DoorDash order for dinner, and we got logged out of the computer upstairs. So there you go. Technology. So okay. So I'm glad we've covered that though. I feel good about that. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about was geographicals. Have you guys ever done a geographical, or even maybe not to a physical place, but maybe like you switch jobs, or like, oh, that's the problem. That'll get me to, sober up, is I'll just change this, that, or the other thing.
I went through a time. You mean like geographical, like trying to like change your life by thinking moving will help, that kind of
Yeah,
thing?
like when Tommy Figs moved to Brooklyn,
Yeah.
and was just like, oh, well, solved.
I haven't gone through a time where I like moved to like think I would solve my problem. Um but I definitely went through a time where I thought like moving would solve all of my problems. And after talking with my therapist, she was kind of like, your problems are still going to go with you when you move, because you like love spending, like I was at a time where I loved spending time on the East Coast with like my friends, and whenever I would be over there, I would associate that with being like happy. And so I went through this time where I thought, well, maybe if I could just move there, I'd be happy. Um and I mean, even if I had, like, it wouldn't be the same as just like, you know, if I went there to visit versus like actually moving there. So it's not something I'm glad I learned before doing that. But yeah, it's definitely been a thought that had crossed my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
For me, I did several geographics like house-wise or apartment-wise. I kept thinking, oh, if I go to this apartment, start over, clean slate, start over, right? New decorations. So I did that several times. And then 6 months before I got sober, I had woken up one morning and I was like, I had made a lot of people in my friends group mad. I was starting to not be able to, I was trying to keep everything compartmentalized between being a PTA mom at a private Christian school, but also like sleeping with all the guys at the dive bar. So like it was, and it was a small town. So it was getting messy. And I was just like, I need to get out of here. I just need to get out of here. And I lived in a small town halfway between Seattle and Portland, and go Tigers. And so I woke up and I was like, I have to get out of here. And at the time, I worked for a small newspaper in that town. And so I was like, I'm just going to apply at the Seattle Times and I'm just going to move to Seattle. And 30 days later, I was working at Seattle Times and had an apartment north of Seattle. And I really, really thought that was going to be a big do over. Like this was going to be it. Like I got a new, more high powered job. I was dealing with all my territory was all the luxury automotive dealers on the east side. It was like, I have arrived, you know, like I was like Sex in the City, Carrie Bradshaw, but sales girl version. And that's when my drinking really took off, like really like it accelerated at a speed that I can't even understand. And the amount of drinking at home and blacking out at home, and you know, going to the liquor store and buying so many half gallons, and they're like, oh, you having a party? I'm like, oh yeah, of one, you know. So it got real bad there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it does. It's kind of messy when you realize that wherever you go, there you are, that whole thing.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that, like, I have done that thinking and physically relocating while sober. Like, I have done the whole, you know, living in California, like, because I grew up there, right? I'm like, oh, this is boring. I know this sounds crazy, but here's the way I thought. And you know, whatever. Still kind of think this way sometimes, but like, it would be sunny every single day, which sounds like a real problem to us now, living where we live, right? But anyway, in my mind, that was boring. It was just always the same weather, never got to wear like snuggly like sweaters and boots, you know. And I just figured between that and between the price of the housing market, like all the expensive housing, and we just, you know, had to get out of there. And this was when I was newly married. And so we moved up here to Seattle. And now I'm like, dude, first of all, it's pretty much on par with the Bay Area in terms of the housing market. It wasn't when we moved here. We've been here a long time. But yeah, and then sunny every day just doesn't really sound like a problem to me anymore. But you know, I bring it up to just point out that like this was how my thinking was, like as an alcoholic addict brain. Like there's always something better on the other side. The grass is greener over there, you know, dogs don't poop over there, whatever. That's
Yeah.
what I thought.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that he had talked about a little bit that resonated with me is he was talking about when he was, you know, working in the city, and maybe you can relate to this as well, Alysse, where like big city life, like everything's like fast paced, this and that. And um he would take like cabs every day to work, and then he would like expense them to other people's accounts, you know, feeling like, okay, I'm living this life. Like on the outside, I look like I have it all. And you think you look like you have it all, and you think you look like you're living the life. And I can definitely relate to that, because like I went through a period where, you know, I was traveling a lot for work, and you're expensing everything, and you're thinking, I'm living this big, huge, like I'm fancy, you know, life, but it's really somebody else paying for it. And the reality is like that is not a fulfilling lifestyle at the end of the day. Like you're living it to look like you are trying to prove something to somebody else. And you're, at the end of the day, it's empty, you know.
Yeah. I even think
Totally.
that when sorry, did you want to comment on that? Go ahead, Alysse.
No, I just said totally. And when you were talking about the grass is always greener, I heard that phrase. I know it's not new, but I heard it a couple of years ago. Like the grass is greener where you water it. Right. Yeah. Just like that's, yeah. So
True.
all of what you both have said, completely on point from my perspective.
I also, the part where he was talking about a relationship that he was in, and he wasn't in it very long, but you know, he was using, and he was trying not to let this girl see how much he was actually using. And there were a couple of points where she was like, oh, yeah, like that's a lot, you know. She was kind of catching on maybe, and he was able to kind of, you know, smooth it over and like, you know, just kind of make her you know, believe that everything was okay and it wasn't that bad. And just feigning interest in somebody else's like life and situation sometimes, and wanting to be genuine, but you kind of aren't genuine, but you want to make them think that you are, because you think that maybe you're going to get there at some point where you are truly genuine, and like all of that stuff, like that really, all of that mess, I completely was like, oh yeah, like I had all that stuff. And basically then he finds out that this girl like has boundaries, and was like, when she figured it out, was kind of like, yeah, no, I'm not, like, I'm done, I'm out. And I just thought, geez, isn't that so healthy? And like, that's what healthy people do, right? Is when they see a situation and they see red flags that don't really fit into their life, and they're like, yeah, okay, so that I'm going to pass. I'm going to pass on that. And I was just struck by that whole mess. I related so much to it, and how, when faced with somebody who was not toxic like I was, they were out of there.
Yeah. I definitely remember like, yeah, that resonated with me as well. But like, being on the side of struggling with addiction, where like I was dating at the time before I got sober, and just feeling like I was well, for one, I was trying to change everything about myself so this person would like me, because I had no sense of who I really was. I was just like drinking a lot and had this idea of who I wanted in my head. Um, but I think also like having somebody set those boundaries and say, yeah, I'm not interested. Like I would always just like, it would hurt me so much, because it was like somebody's reflecting back in a mirror, like,
Yeah.
you are a walking red flag right now. I don't want to be involved with you. And now looking back, I'm like, yeah, who would? Who would want that? But yeah, that's hard.
Yep. Well, I think too, like, the other part for me that was just like kind of gripping was the fear, like the fear of being found out, constantly in that, fear mode. And when he's working at the bank, and he had met that guy who, I can't remember if it was his brother or cousin, somebody he was related to, like worked in a pharmacy. And so it was like, oh, ding, ding, ding. Like, I'm going to keep this guy as a friend, because now, I've got this hookup for this guy who works at a pharmacy. And like, God, what a bunch of complicated layers. And I relate, man. I mean, I needed a freaking Trello board to try and remember who I lied to and what I said. And I mean, I couldn't keep it straight, and that was exhausting. And so, yeah, the chaos of the whole thing, the constant chaos was like, ugh, yeah. I have chaos now, to be honest, but it's self-induced, just normal sober chaos. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I there's definitely a difference between like organized chaos and like the constant fear and paranoia chaos of not knowing like if you're going to be found out, or even when you've done actually nothing wrong, but there's still that like underlying paranoia that you messed up, because you're not sure, like you're like, oh, did I black out and do something wrong? Like I don't know what you don't always know what you're doing. But yeah, like not always feeling like you're in control, or like people can trust you. Yeah.
Before, he was discussing all of those relapses when he had gone to treatment, and he said, he listened to people talk at treatment, and he heard what they were saying, and then he just kind of parroted back what they were saying so he could get out of there. I was like, oh yeah, And it's funny because in some ways I was like, dude, I didn't, I know this sounds weird, but like, I didn't realize how common that was. Not that I thought I was special, but I think I thought it was rare or something. Nope, it wasn't rare. So, in some ways I'm like, well, yeah, no, I didn't reinvent the wheel on any of these things, and I think that there was some kind of belief deep seated in me that maybe I did. I don't know why.
It's
So,
always good to know we're not alone, right?
yeah, that is true. In fact, speaking of alone, I think it was on Mother's Day or somewhere in there. So I follow Tommy Figs, and there was a very sweet picture of him and his partner, wife. I'm not sure where he is in that arena, but I read it. I just can't remember at this moment, but it was so sweet. It was just very sweet. It was like a picture of them at a wedding or something, and they were dancing. And he was just basically talking about like the big difference between, then and now kind of thing, being able to, be with somebody authentically, genuinely, and you're able to give yourself to somebody. I just thought it was very nice. And yeah, it's a gift of sobriety. They come in all different, forms, right? Shapes and sizes and all different kinds of things. And so I hope that doesn't, get old for me. I hope I don't decide that like drinking sounds like a solution of any kind. Now, did you two go to rehab?
I did
did
not.
No.
I did outpatient 3 days a week, 3 hours a night for, I don't know if it was 3 months, but it was more than, it was probably 3 months for a summer. I did do that because I was like, I can't take time off. I have to work. So I did it after work.
Got it. Yeah.
And I didn't, but I did go see a therapist because I was like at a point where I was like, my relationship is like struggling, and I could tell like we were arguing a lot and just like getting drunk and arguing. And so I knew something had to change. It was either I kept the alcohol or kept my relationship. But the thing that was hard for me to reflect back on was like my therapist kept saying, like alcohol is like a depressant, like alcohol can cause these issues, and I just like I didn't want to listen. And so I was like, no, that's not the issue. Like that's not the issue. And so kind of coming into it from like a more of a sober, curious standpoint, and just seeing what not drinking for 30 days would do for me, and then went from there. So it wasn't easy, but just a little bit different experience.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. It blows my mind too. Like, I just don't even know. Cause like my sponsor herself, she didn't go to treatment. And, it's just amazing to me how people can get to the end of the, like when we get to the bottom, we get to the end of ourselves, so they say, or whatever, it just looks similar, and our paths out maybe were circuitous or different, slightly different. And I just think it's interesting that people can, I mean, I hear people every day in meetings say they just stopped. They just quit. And it happens.
You know what I would love though? I would love to go to treatment now. Like I would love to go somewhere for 30 days and just work on myself.
Right?
Yeah.
I know. Like that's so interesting. Of course, yeah, I didn't value
Yeah.
it, didn't look at it that way back then, but yeah, sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I know.
daily counseling sessions, daily meetings with your case manager.
Yeah. I would definitely choose a bougie one, to be clear, but yeah.
Oh, well, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's something else that's funny. Back to Tommy Figs for a second, but still on the topic of rehab, is he mentioned that he knew somebody at his rehab, or he met somebody named Ulysses. So I met a Ulysses in rehab. And interestingly, he was from the East Coast. And I'm like, oh my God, was it the same Ulysses? But I don't think so, because yeah. But the guy, my Ulysses, who I met, he's not mine, but you know what I mean? I have no idea what happened to him, but he was one of the ones who I was joking so much about the suitcase full of crap that I brought to rehab, that you know, I mean, swimsuits, come on, right? And he's like, no. He's like, Amy, that's valid. He's like, because on the website, it said, pack like you're going on a tropical vacation. And I'm like, it did? Somehow that totally escaped me, but that's because I didn't think I was really actually going to a rehab. And so I guess I was not really researching where I was being sent very well. And so, yeah, but long story long, I knew a Ulysses also, which I think is interesting. How common is that name? Just
I
I've never known
also-
anybody with that name.
I have not either, but there was a guy in my 8th grade class, Philip Panko. Philip, if you're listening, hello. He nicknamed me Ulysses because it's spelled comparable to Alysse. It's just putting a U instead of the A, right? Yeah. He was the only one that ever did it, but he called me Ulysses.
okay.
I don't know that was a compliment, but I don't know.
And now I know how to spell Ulysses. So.
You're welcome.
I listened to the book, so that part might have escaped me.
Well, you learn so many amazing things on the Boozeless Book Club, right? I mean, it's just never ending. The possibilities are limitless. What else did I have written down here that I wanted to be sure that I touched on? Oh, humility. I was wondering if you guys, would feel comfortable sharing about humility at all, because I feel like I did not know what that was, for example, when I was in rehab. And so coming back to like the whole concept of like, being so full of self, not recognizing it, not knowing it, and then talking about, Tommy Figs was saying, about his first relapse, that, oh, look, it was fine for like 3 days. And then I was right back to where I was, right? And so I think there's, for me at least, there's a part of me that failed to realize for sure back then, and it's something I need to keep in mind now, that like, if I'm not seeking humility, like humility will eventually kind of find me in the embarrassing sense. So like if I'm not seeking, my spiritual connection, if I'm not seeking books that are influential in my life and inspirational and whatever I need to do for my program, right? Eventually I will get to the end of myself, and I don't even mean drinking. Like, I just mean I will get sick and tired of being sick and tired in whatever it is that I'm trying to do. And even looping back to what we were talking about at the beginning, justifications and just feeling, kind of like in a funk or whatever. Sometimes my life will go like in cycles like that. And really what that is a signal to me always is to, okay, it's time to get into service. I'm not like getting into action as much or helping other people as much. And I thought, God, being humbled is such a gift in and of itself, because it does have that paradox effect where it creates humility, and so yeah, I just kind of, I mean, I completely identified too with the whole phenomenon of craving kicking right in for him, at his first relapse. And then all of a sudden, okay, now on the fourth day or whatever, I'm totally back there.
For me, I don't enjoy being humble, to be clear, but it's easier now than it used to be. And it's way easier when I just don't make the wrong actions, right? But like, as a person who's been through the 12-step process and gone on an amends tour, not just to Michael's or Target. I mean, I made a lot of amends to places, certainly, but making amends to people, that was hard. And it didn't go the way I thought it would. The ones I thought would be hard were actually easy. The ones I thought would be easy were more complicated. So there was humility in that, and then just humility in and being a boss and being a leader, that I don't always make the right calls, and having to go and clean that up, as soon as possible. That can be hard. I had one situation, it was awful. Long story long. I love how you say that, long story long, because I will take 45 minutes to tell a 5-minute story.
I like it.
Long story long, my son and I were still on the same Apple account. He was 18 or 19, which meant on our Macs, we could see each other's messages. And we just had a deal. I wasn't looking at his stuff. He wasn't looking at mine. It was still all on one bill. We both just honored that. So it was like, we functioned like that for a decade, like a long time, never had any problems. Well, then he gets a girlfriend. I can't say that I liked her that much. And, long story long, getting to the point, there was a lot of behavior that I saw with her on Instagram, and I had formed some very serious opinions about it. And I messaged one of my friends screenshots and opinions of what I thought about it. And it didn't even occur to me that she would be using Jacob's laptop and she would see that I sent all these messages saying these very unkind things about her. Right now, I stood behind my concerns, and I did say that when I apologized. Jacob didn't talk to me for 2 months. It's the only time he didn't. Oh, and Amy, I don't know if you've ever had your kids ever not talk to you, but 2 months is forever. It's forever. And when it happened, I was out of town. I think I was in Nashville. So I couldn't do anything about it. And he was so angry. And I really think that's the only major fight we've had. We've never really gotten, I mean, we've had little things, but there's never been a big showdown. We're both pretty easygoing. But I was totally in the wrong. Also, I was body shaming. I was slut shaming. I was totally in the wrong. Right. And I still had, and I had concerns, and they were valid. And I knew that she was a gal who had not had a lot of good guidance. She came from a very broken home, bounced around a lot. So I could have been better. I could have been a better person, and I wasn't. And then I had to own that. And we did repair it, and we were able to move forward. And I think they were together after that for at least another year and a half. I was not sad when they broke up. But that was humility. Of course I was sorry that I had hurt her feelings. And what she said to me, and this was the kicker. She was like, "You don't understand. You're like the one woman in my life I look up to and really respect." Oh. Right? Like, yeah.
That sucks. Yeah. That's hard.
Yeah. So it turns out you can also be an asshole sober. Right? You can. And so, but thankfully I had tools to try to repair it and build back the trust. We did immediately get separate Apple IDs after that. Immediately. Yeah. So
the moral of this story.
Yeah.
Oh,
So humility, it's a painful process, but you know, I've never done that again. I can't say I've never talked catty about people. That would be a lie. But I've never sent text messages of that unkind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's not being a girl's girl. That's being a mean girl. And I don't like mean girls.
No, me either. But you know, yeah. I can see how that would happen to me if I were. Sometimes I think, you know, about just in parenting in general, you know, wording things. How am I wording things when I'm like talking about, you know, my kids, and how am I, you know, keeping their identity anonymous, and like I can't really do that in your case. It's like yeah, that's tough. And I will tell you guys a funny and embarrassing story is that when I was in rehab and I had a temporary sponsor, I was busy telling her, this is the second time I was in rehab, how humble I was. So I'm telling her, you know, I'm just so humble now. I get it. I have arrived at a place of wisdom with my, you know, lo and behold, my 13 days or whatever it is. And I'm not, no shade on people who have 13 days. That's huge. But I was in this position of like, just feeling like things are looking up at any minute. They're just going to turn around because I am so humble. And she gently and carefully and kindly and lovingly pointed out to me, you know, if you're humble, you don't have to talk about it. You don't have to tell people that. And I was like, oh, okay. It took me a couple days to even figure out what that meant.
I think for me, you know, when I think of like being humble, a lot of it had to do with me having to be right about a lot of things, because I felt like when I was drinking a lot, I had like one perspective, and that was my perspective, and that was the only perspective that mattered. And as somebody that's in like as a white person that's in an interracial relationship, the way I see things in the world can be very different from the way my partner sees things in the world, and the way that he maybe is being treated or perceives that he's being treated. And so until I got sober, and it wasn't until then that I really started seeing things from like, you can have the same experience, but two people can have like very different experiences of the same experience and very different perspectives. Um, and so it was really, I had to humble myself and realize like I am not always right about this. You know, we can go to a restaurant and he might feel very uncomfortable there for a variety of reasons. And for me to brush it off and say, oh no, it's fine. Like this place is great. You'll love that, you know. It took me a long time to realize that like I needed to be humble and realize that I didn't have to be right about this thing. And I needed to listen to somebody else's perspective on how they're feeling. And that was really hard for me to do when I was drinking, because I only had that one perspective.
Yep. Yeah, the whole being right thing. I swear I could do an entire podcast episode on that. That's one of my biggest character defects, challenges, struggles, whatever you want to call them, is, you know, that fear of like, people are going to think I'm an idiot, you know, and like, yeah, even though I might be doing something that is very characteristic of that behavior, but it's like, yeah, it's perception. And yeah, it's kind of interesting the way that stuff will unfold in our lives. And at least for me, it's just that's one of my biggest ones is I want to be right, or I just don't want to be wrong, you know? I want to have one of the rights. And so, yeah, I'm working on it, right? Like that's what I'm doing, is I'm working on it, I guess. And so on that note, so Tommy Figs, as we're wrapping up here, I relate to you. We are brother sister in this thing. I definitely very much enjoyed the way that, he presented all of the things that he presented, in talking about addiction. Boom, I'm in the right place. My butt is in the right seat. And so, I recommend it to anybody who, might be wondering, and if your life is unmanageable, like Tommy describes, I don't know, maybe you can find some similarities instead of differences. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that is that I very much enjoyed how honest he was. He didn't try and beat around the bush. So if anybody else has anything closing they would like to say, then I will announce the next book. But go ahead if anybody has any closing thoughts on any of this, and it could be about, the Amends Sash too. We can do that. So
Yeah, write us in if you would like to be part of the Amends Sash project. I mean, please, like, get a hold of us, because I think this one has potential.
I concur.
And I can't wait to hear your interview with Tommy Figs coming up. I think it's like airs the week after this. So
That's awesome. That's so awesome.
Yay!
So super cool.
Can't wait. I also can't wait to read our next book. We will be reading Wildflower by Drew Barrymore.
I love her.
I know, right? Circa 2014 or something. It's a little
2015.
2015. Oh, well, thanks. And Alysse would know because
I met her at the book signing in Seattle, November 2015. I had just come off of a hellacious week. My son had been in the hospital for a week. He has Crohn's disease and he had to have a lot of his insides removed. I had been working from the hospital, and my sister flew in from New York because she was gonna, once he got released, she was gonna watch him the following week so I could go back to work. And so my parents came up to watch him at night while her and I went to this book signing, and I had my book of Wildflowers, and then I had a high school friend, Angie. She had seen that I was going, and she was like, I will do anything if you could get her to sign the book too. And I was like, yeah, girl, I got you. I will try, So I had two books, and I got up at the front of the line, and I'm normally pretty cool around celebrities. I've been fortunate enough to have met more than I can count. And I'm normally, they're just normal people. They put their pants on one leg at a time, just like most of us do. And so I was just going to be cool, calm, and collected, get my book signed. And I got up there and I lost my bananas. I was just like, I love you. Like I just lost my bananas. And then in true Drew Barrymore fashion, she was like, I love you too. So she signed both the books. And for those of you who don't know, so over at the Sober Curator, we're trying to get Drew Barrymore's attention. And so a group of us dressed up as Drew Barrymore, or the various characters she's played over the years. And we made a video for her, and we've posted it on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest. And I mean, we've put it everywhere. I've emailed it to the show. I actually hunted down one of the producers on Facebook and stalked them. Yeah, I'm super stealthy, very Veronica Mars over here. But so now it's in God and Drew Barrymore's hands. But I'm excited that we're reading her book. It's a phenomenal book. I'm actually going to read it again. Excuse me. Now I have the hiccups. But it's a great book. I just love her. I just love her.
I do too. I love her so much, and I'm excited. I'm so pumped, and I'm really pissed at myself that I missed out on the Drew Barrymore costume.
I know, because you both love a theme. I know you both love a theme.
Yeah.
And before we go, speaking of themes, Carolyn, can you just talk to us a little bit about that recent Instagram reel that I saw in you in a red gown that had like it draped like 20 feet behind you? I need to hear in your words, and Amy's listeners need to go and find this reel and what was going on. That looked like an amazing experience.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I was in Turkey, Istanbul recently, and it's a photo shoot that you can book there. They have these in other countries as well. Like I did one in Greece a couple of years ago. They're basically these really, really long dresses And you carry it around like this, like it's like this backpack. It's so big, the train is, and then it's at a rooftop, and so it's a whole production. You try on the dress that you want to wear. They have somebody like they have two people like throwing the dress up in the air or like moving it so it looks really like pretty behind you. And they tell you how to pose and what to do. It was super fun. I highly recommend it if you are the type of person that loves to take photos or loves to be in photos, whatever.
I was contemplating sharing it in my stories, just being like, I'm friends with her. Like, look at this. I might still do that, by the way. I might still do that.
So this is a really good way to end this, because what we can do, because I know Carolyn takes photos on the side, is we can put together a package. We can do an Amends Sash and a giant dress photo shoot. And I mean, can you be any happier after that? Is there anything left in your life? No stone would be unturned. So
It'll be like an amends flying dress package with, yeah. I love it.
This is what sobriety looks like, people. This is what sobriety looks like. This is what you do when you get sober. You get crazy.
Look,
get creative. All right.
I'm here for it. I'm here for all of it.
I'm here for it too. And I'm sorry this is a longer episode, but I do need to throw this in before we finish, because how about this? So the flying dress is long, right? I'm assuming it's a train, right, Carolyn?
Yeah, it's a train. It looked like it was a train.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that train is the 8th step. That is the list. Okay. And then the 9th step is the sash, the badges. So you've got the 8 and 9 thing.
I'm going to need a really long train. I'm going to need a really long train.
Yes.
That's hilarious. Well, that kind of does evoke a little Met Gala, right? I don't know if you guys watched the Met Gala this year, but with a lot of them that have the huge trains, because it's that opportunity to go up the steps. And I saw several that had stuff written on the back. Like it's something along those lines. So yeah.
Done.
I'll just call Christian Siriano and see if he can work with us on that.
I mean, why wouldn't
I'll just give him a call.
To?
Yeah, I'll just give him a call.
Just give him a call. Just see what he says. Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. All right. Well, on that note, be kind, rewind. Thank you for the honor of your time. Take what you like and leave the rest behind.